Hello.
Hello, hello.
I'm going to remove these down. I can see everyone in the comments already. I love it. We don't even have to ask them. So I'm just going to make sure this is all perfect. All right. So, hey, everyone, welcome and thanks for being here tonight. I am Kirsten. I'm a longtime advocate, and this work is really personal to me. I got involved in criminal justice advocacy after a loved one was incarcerated, and I haven't stopped since. I co-founded Bridges Beyond Bars to support others walking that same road, but more than anything, I care about elevating voices that don't usually get heard.
And I'm Sarah. I'm here tonight, just not as part of this work, but as someone who's lived it and still living it. I have deep roots in this system, and I've seen how hard people fight inside just to be treated like human beings. I've lost people, I've advocated for people, and I've sat in the waiting rooms too many times to count. That's why this space matters.
We do these lives because we believe in second chances, in truth telling, and in giving people the chance to tell their own stories, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard.
So do us a favor, as many of you already have, hit share on this live right now so more folks can hear what's coming. And let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from. We want to know who's in the room tonight. Also, if you've got questions as we go, drop them in the chat. We've got loved ones of tonight's guests watching along, ready to help answer in real time.
So just a quick content warning before we begin. Tonight's stories include mentions of violence, robbery, and adverse childhood experiences. So please take care of yourself as you listen and step away if needed.
All right, let's get into it. First up, we're introducing someone incredibly close to Marcus. Please welcome Meredith Ingram along with Marcus's parents.
Maribeth. It's
I'm
not
sorry.
Meredith. Are you dyslexic?
It's a common mistake. It's okay.
Oh, did I really say Mary Jane? Anyways, who are here to share a bit about who Marcus is before we play his interview. That's why we love, people love our entertainment here. They come for our entertainment most of the time. It's okay. Mary Beth, I apologize.
That's okay, Susan. It's no problem. Sorry. Thanks, Sarah. Okay, so you want me to get started? Hi, everybody. We were hoping Marcus's mom could be on here as well, but she was having some technical difficulties. So hopefully she'll be able to
bring her up after you're done.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So I guess just a little bit of a background with Marcus and I. We first met back in 1992, 93. We were young and beautiful and full of hope. And he was always so special to me. We were just friends, but we were crushing hard on each other. He was and still is the most beautiful man I've ever seen in my life. But beyond that, he was always so kind, so sweet, so respectful of me and my son. And even though we drifted apart after some time, and it was 30 years before I was in contact with him again, I always carried him in my heart. I always remembered that respectful young man who always treated me differently, than other guys did. He was just so sweet. So I never forgot about him. In fact, I even have told my children about him over the years. Like, oh, there was this boy named Marcus, and he was just so wonderful. And so he also thought about me over all that time, and he was able to get in contact with me in 2021. And like I said, that was, almost 30 years later. So I was so excited to hear from him, but at the same time, I was very nervous. I knew that he had been in prison at that point of 16, 17 years. And I have never known anyone in prison before. I've only known what I've seen in the movies and on TV, right? And I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what that time may have done to him. I didn't know what kind of person he might be. And to my delight, he was the same person that I knew way back then. So sweet, so kind, so respectful. Despite his time in prison, I expected him to be angry and bitter. And he was still the same person that I knew. And we embarked on a romantic relationship. But once I heard his story, I told him, I said, no matter what happens with us romantically, I vowed to work as hard as I could to help him get home before his release date, which is now 2032. He's gotten a little bit of time off for good time, but unfortunately, because his crime was considered a violent crime, he doesn't qualify for, the enhanced sentence credits. And I'm sorry, I know I'm all over the place. So he was sentenced to 32 and a half years for armed robbery with mace. Nobody was hurt in the commission of his crimes, and I'm not taking away from that. Of course, he has always been remorseful for what he did. He has always felt bad for his victims, even though he knew he wasn't going to hurt them. They didn't know he wasn't going to hurt them, and he recognizes that, But 32 and a half year sentence at 35 years old is basically a life sentence. He's missed his children growing up. He's missed milestones in the family, birthdays, anniversaries, holidays. His son got married recently. Thankfully, I was able to attend, but of course, he would have certainly liked to have been there. I've grown very close with his family, and I love them, and they love me as their own. And I love being able to be an extension of him, but clearly, we would rather he actually be here. Um, there's so much injustice that I didn't realize was also prevalent in the DOC. Um, for one thing, his sentence was 32 and a half years, and his co-defendant got 6 years. Marcus is a Black man. Yes, he has had issues in the past with the law and things like that. He has, he hasn't lived a Boy Scout life, but the discrepancy in their sentences, I thought was very telling. We currently have a petition with Governor Youngkin for clemency. We've discussed waiting for the next governor to come in because we know that it is a big risk with Youngkin, given his views on the criminal justice system. However, we're going to take that risk. We didn't want to wait any longer. He's waited 20 years now. June was his sorry. And that hit him pretty hard, I mean, any time is a long time, but 2 decades of your life is a lot. So we don't want to wait any longer. We want to push as hard as we can and hope to get him home. He wants to hug his mom again. He wants to hang out and have a beer with his dad. He wants to spend time with his son and his daughter-in-law. I have a large group of family and friends who are very supportive of him coming home. And admittedly, a lot of people were skeptical at first, concerned about me and what is she doing? Why is she with somebody in prison? Has she lost her mind? But not everybody was like that, but a few people. But over time, everyone has been able to see the positive impact that he's had on my life. And I know I've had a positive impact on his. I'm a better person for knowing him. And I feel like he has a lot to contribute out here. He has also contributed a lot while he's been incarcerated. He's served as a mentor for a lot of guys over the years. They all call him Unc. And come to him for advice, whether that's like, they're just so fed up and angry with the system, or they're having troubles at home. And, he's talked a lot of guys down from doing things that may have gotten them in more trouble. He says he sees a lot of the younger guys come in and they are angry and they don't want to follow the rules and they just want to buck the system. And he understands that feeling. But tries to help them understand that, like, unfortunately, even when you follow the rules in there, it doesn't always matter, but to do the best they can, to be the best they can and make the best of their time so they don't end up getting more time or coming back. When he gets home, he's always talked about wanting to have like a volunteer position to work with troubled youth, young men who might be on the same path, and to keep them from going there. Because again, despite what people may see in the movies, it's not cool to be in prison. It doesn't make you a tough guy. It's a nightmare. And I've seen the stress that he goes through, the fear that he goes through. He almost lost his life, which you'll hear on his recording. Yeah, he is a good man, and we've been together now for 4 years, and so I've seen everything there is to see. I've seen his heart. I've seen his spirit. I've seen him be strong. He's the strongest person I've ever known, but at the same time, he's very vulnerable. I mean, he's human, So, having said all that, I will say that I would like for hopefully people will hear his story and see him as a human, not a criminal, but a person, a father, a son, a husband, a cousin, a friend. who has more than been rehabilitated and learned his lesson. He's not a danger to society. He's not coming out with any sort of criminal intent. He wants to open his own garage. He's got his mechanic's license, and that's another thing he has a passion for. A passion for. So I don't know if you want me to do it now or after, but I can put in, we have a change.org petition that was gaining some momentum when we first started circulating it, but unfortunately it's lost that momentum. So I'd really like to see that up and running again. We can add that, the signatures to the pardon packet. We can also send letters to the governor and to Trudy Harris. She is the lead investigator with the parole board, and those letters would go to the office of the Secretary of the Commonwealth, and again would be added to his pardon packet. So I'm hoping his mom will be able to come on and speak, but I think
You want to try and bring her up?
Yeah. How do I do that?
Okay. I'll do it. So I'll
Okay.
bring her up, and then you can message her and tell her she can speak.
Can you hear us?
I hear you.
Oh, you can hear us now. Hi.
I hear y'all good.
Hello. Thank you for joining us. If you want to just give a little bit of a background and speak to Marcus, we would love to hear from you as well.
Well, he's my one and only boy, and we raised him the best we could. But when they get at a certain age, they're gonna do what they want to do. Think they're grown. But he stayed in church while he was home, and when he got out last time, he was in church, and they come and got him on that. No, he had to go to court on that Monday or Tuesday one, and that's when judge sentenced him to 37 years, and he's been gone from us for 20 years. So here I am, 75 years old. Me and my husband both are 75 years old, and we just can't do what we can do until we can get some help from him. And so y'all need to send him on home to us. He's no hard criminal. He's no criminal, but he just got in the wrong group. Went to the wrong party, and they got in them drugs, and that's what started it.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate. It's not easy to get up and share these things, especially when there's so much pain attached, especially with mothers and wives and family members. So thank you for being here, and thank you for volunteering that information and sharing a little bit of an insight as to what Marcus means to your family. I'd love to roll the clip of Marcus's story now. So I'm going to pop us all down, and I'm going to bring that up, and we can hear directly from Marcus.
Okay.
We have Marcus Ingram on the phone. I think it's important to give you an opportunity to tell people your perspective and your version of events. So I guess if we can start from the beginning, if you can talk to me about what life was like before the crime that had you sentenced to the time that you're doing now.
I was raised by good parents. I had a great mother and father, and I still have a great mother and father. Although my mother is not in the best of health medically, she's still going strong. Haven't seen her in almost 10 years now. She was always my backbone, and she instilled good morals and principles in me as far as coming up the right way. And my stepfather raised me because my biological father wouldn't have nothing to do with me. After he found out my mom was pregnant, he pretty much left her high and dry. I was raised by my stepfather, and of course my aunties and my granny. My granny had a lot to do with my upbringing too. So I can say that I was raised with a good family until my latter days of my juvenile years when I started running the streets with my buddies.
Did you have questions about your dad that kind of caused maybe like anger
Well,
or resentment towards him?
I knew my biological dad, and he used to try to come and get me for weekend visits. And when he did, it was like he favored the family that he was with then. So it just, I wasn't feeling him and I didn't want to stay with him, but he used to force me to come stay with him just because he had that, like he wouldn't force her to turn me over to him. And I did have anger towards him because of that. I didn't want to be there. Like I was fine where I was, and it was like snatching me out of my comfort zone and taking me away for the weekend and the family that I knew. And I would always go kicking and screaming, crying, and I just didn't like it. That whole weekend, I would be miserable, and it even got to the point sometimes where my mom would have to come get me sometimes before the weekend visit was over. Like he's never been my dad. In the 20 years of incarceration that I've been locked up, he's not said one word to me other than my mother should have raised me better. I took that as a smack in the face because my mom raised me just fine.
You don't really get a chance to condemn how someone raised me when you gave her no choice but to raise me on her own. Did you have brothers growing up, or did you go and seek that sort of male companionship and belonging on the streets?
I think that's the biggest part of it. I didn't have any brothers at home. I only had my baby sister, and it was me and her. And when I went out, I only had like my male friends, and that's when I went out. And unfortunately, the group of guys that I chose to go out with when I was younger was not the best group I chose to go out with. Some of them were negative and took me down a negative road. And I ended up doing time in juvie, and I stayed in trouble. Not a lot, but just the shit the kids do, breaking windows and stripping cars. Violent kid, but the other kid,
The troublemaker.
like this the neighborhood menace.
Did you feel like you had any sort of, or your parents had any sort of support from the system to help you make better choices?
Well, I can honestly say that juvenile system helped me because I only went once. And I ended up going to one of the more minimum security ones because, like I said, I never went for anything violent. It was always your little petty charges. Ended up sending me to a Natural Bridge Learning Center out in, I think it was Lexington somewhere. And that's where I ended up getting my certification as a auto mechanic. So I got my trade there that has followed me through life to this day. And I made a good living off of being a mechanic. When I go home this time, that's what I plan on doing. It was something that I can say I actually needed to straighten me up.
That's positive. I think that's the key, right? Is like listening to the kids and going, okay, what can we do that's going to motivate them? How did you then find yourself in the position of the crime that led to your incarceration now? So what did that look like?
I was sitting at my grandfather's one night. We were watching the World Series. And I walked to my mom's house, which was right across the street. And I hadn't been in my house but maybe 5 minutes tops. And before I could get undressed and get in bed, someone knocked on the door. And when I looked out my window, my house was surrounded with police. So when I go to the door, they tell me to step outside. And I step outside, and they immediately place me in handcuffs and take me to a car. And when I ask them what I'm being arrested for, they tell me that I'm being arrested for attempted robbery. And I tell my mom to come outside, and they tell her that a lady down the street had identified me as a person that had stopped by her house and told her that I needed water for my car. When she let me in to get water for her car, that I had knocked her little kid down and then tried to rob her. And when my mom and dad told them where I was, they was like, she identified me as the suspect. When we went to court, they said that they had used canines to track the suspect. No canines had been to our house or anywhere near our house. So
Right.
that was false. And it ended up being a railroad. Unfortunately, my parents was not able to hire a attorney. So I was stuck with a court-appointed attorney, and I couldn't prove that I was not at that lady's house. I ended up getting 10 years for attempted robbery.
So you got out a juvenile, everything was going well, and then sort of your first interaction with the law, you were pinned for something you didn't do.
That was the one time that I was innocent of a crime that I actually did do.
So once you got out from
Yeah.
doing that 10 years, then what did life look like?
Once I got out from that, I got out in 98, and 6 months of me getting out, I had a job. I started out unloading trucks for a freight company at Kroger Warehouse over in Salem, Virginia. And I was making like $18 an hour at that time. And that immediately went to me being supervisor of my own crew with my own warehouse. Within 90 days to 6 months later, and I was bringing home like $1,500 a week. And then I met my youngest daughter's mom. We had our daughter in 2000. We moved out of the apartment into a house. I had a 3-bedroom, full finished basement house with a fenced backyard. Everything was good for the first 4 years. In 2004, she was on her way to work, and she got T-boned on her way to work, and that ultimately ended up with her having back problems and being put on pain medication. And they put her on roxicodone, and she was put on 90 pills a month for a period of 6 months. And then one day when I took her in for her checkup, they gave her 7 pills, and they told her, we can no longer give you script for 90 pills. Wean yourself off of it. She took them 7 pills and she went home with them. And after them 7 pills was gone, she started taking her check and buying pills using bill money to do that. And then that became a problem. He agreed to stop doing the pills, but then she went from pills, and the alcohol is what drove me to doing cocaine because I had had enough of her and her shit. For instance, I came home one day and the kids was running around in the house. They didn't even know where their mommy was. And she
Right.
was downstairs under a swimming pool, blacked out drunk. She would call the police on me and try to have me arrested all the time for frivolous shit. They would come and find out she was lying and then they would leave. It just kept going on and on and on until finally they made her leave and left me with the kids at the house, the car, and I had everything.
Right.
I couldn't put all of that. So, it got to the point where I couldn't put all the bills and that's when I turned to my robbery spree. Like, I had to do something to feed my baby. And that's when I got caught up with the crime spree that I've been on now. Like, I had a drug problem, but I also had to feed my kids. So I started robbing stores. I would snatch the money and run. It came a time when one of the clerks in the store pulled a gun on me. And that's when I resorted to the pepper spray in my robbery. I felt like pepper spray was the safest way for me to rob somebody and not hurt anybody or get hurt. But little did I know, pepper spray was the worst thing that I could have done because pepper spray actually carries more time than an actual fire because a firearm only carries 5 years. Pepper spray carries 40 years. Somebody
Wow.
needs to make that make sense to me because I will never understand that, but that's the law. So when I done the second robbery, I told my co-defendant I couldn't, I don't want to go on like this, and I begged her to take me to rehab. For one, because I knew that what I was doing wasn't right. She refused to take me to rehab because she felt like she would lose me because we had just got together. So she would rather continue driving me around robbing these stores as opposed to taking me to rehab. So I confessed, and I didn't deny any of them. And I immediately broke down into tears when they took me in because I felt bad for what I'd done. I was suffering from a depression. They did a court-ordered psychiatric evaluation on me, and it was determined that I suffered a major depressive disorder while doing these crimes. And that wasn't even paid attention to when they sentenced me. I just broke down and told them, like, listen, man, I did it. I'm sorry. If I could take it back, lock me up, took me to jail. And I'm still sitting here 20 years later doing this time for robbery or pepper spray.
So, what was your total sentence that they gave to you when you were sentenced for the robbery?
Okay, they gave me 32 and a half years.
And did you get any
Mine was
suspended or
32
did you do the full
years.
32?
Mine was actually 50 years on one of the charges. So I've got suspended time over my head.
So, talk to me about, I guess, like obviously you had already done 10 years in prison and then you're looking down the barrel of another 32. So, what has this sort of
Yeah.
sentence looks like for you?
The first 10 years of my incarceration, I completed anger management. I've done mentoring. I have completed Thinking for a Change, and I did a substance abuse course. And then I was sent to King Mountain. And unfortunately, I was put in a cell with a mental health patient there. And on March 3rd, 2023, it was the worst day of my life because I was almost killed. I was attacked with a lock and a sock. I was beat for 18 seconds. And the only reason that he stopped was because I collapsed in my own blood. He thought that I was dead. Those people didn't even tell my wife that I was taken to a hospital. And then when she did get in touch with him, they told her that the only reason that they would have told her is if I was dead. That's when I really got the true feeling of what it feels like to be a victim.
First, I'm sorry that that happened to you. You understand the hurt of being on the other side from having gone through that experience and understanding the sort of trauma that now leaves with you every day. I'm sure that you're more vigilant than you were before, more aware of your surroundings, untrusting, all of those things. And then not to mention probably injuries that you still live with as a result of that. But it certainly gives you a different perspective.
I suffer from PTSD from it. I still sometimes have bad dreams, but I'm getting there. It really made me feel bad for what I did to people.
Tell me about what growth you've had or your experience with incarceration this time versus if you look back and you were first incarcerated. What is Marcus like now as opposed to back then?
When I first came in the system, of course, I was angry at myself for one, because, I know I let a lot of people down. Okay. And I knew that, that person that left the street wasn't who I really was. So, of course, when I first came in the system, I had a I don't give a damn attitude. Didn't listen to rules and regulations. But I still maintained enough discipline to not go catching a lot of disciplinary charges. I kept my nose clean. I knew how far I could push the bar without getting charges. But I did test the limits with them. And then after I met my wife, I began to clean my act up. But that incident that took place, and I began to try to enroll in victim impact programs. And I wish I could, because I would apologize again today for what I've done, because I lived it. And it's different because with them, they was able to get justice. But with me, I'm still fighting to get justice for what happened to me. I feel like that's part of my punishment for what I did to the people that I did. That's how I look at it, and that's how I continue to go through life and be able to deal with that situation. And because of that incident, I have to take meds twice a day for migraines.
Right.
I was left with a memory, that's for sure.
Right. I think, like you said, it has given you a new sort of understanding and appreciation of victimization. Like, even if you didn't have those physical injuries, like there's psychological toll, there's mental toll, there's emotional toll. Obviously, it still very much upsets you when you talk about it, right? And I think when applying that to your situation, obviously we know that you didn't go in with a gun, but there's obviously possibly psychological toll on your victims from that. What kind of conversation are you having with maybe younger guys that you see that are going down sort of a negative path or trying to buck the system? Are you imparting your lived experience onto them?
Yeah, it's funny you ask. I don't know. My wife told me on my birthday, I got assaulted by the police here. And somehow they reversed the role, of course, and tried to say I assaulted the police. And they put me in RHU for 9 days. They put a young guy back there in the cell beside me. He was 20 years old, and he weighed about probably 100 pounds. And they shoved him in a cell and pepper sprayed him and beat the shit out of him for no reason. And, the whole time they was doing it, he was screaming, "Stop, like, what did I do? I'm not resisting, I'm handcuffed." So I told the kid once it was over with, like, what happened to you wasn't right. Coming into the system, I seen guys like him, and while I was on Buckingham, I mentored guys like him. So I felt like it was my duty to try to talk to the youngin', and because where he's going, like, if he don't change his attitude, he might die up there, because they're gonna beat him bad up there. Further you go up in the mountains, the worse the ass will get, the bigger the hole you get. And some people don't make it. Like, it's sad, but some of us don't make it from the beatings they give us. I said, that man that whipped you today, he outweighed you probably by 115 pounds, 120 pounds. I said, you getting ready to go to River North, King Mountain, or it was another level 4, Pocahontas. And I got news for you. Them white dudes up there are twice as the white dudes down here. And they're not going to stop. This officer stopped after like 5 minutes of whipping you. When they beat you up there, they beat you until they break something. So I told him all of this. And believe it or not, he sat there and listened to me, and I could tell that fear had hit him. Because by the time he left, he wasn't ready to go up there. He was trying to stay, but, it was too late. So I told him, I said, look, bro, you can make it anywhere. You just got to change your mindset, put your head down, go to school, follow the policy, the rules. Stay out of the way, man, and you can make it. Like, you'll be back on lowland before you know it. If you go up there with the mentality you had when you came back here, I hate to tell you, but you're going to die or you're going to go up further. I give it to them cut and dry.
I don't think you necessarily have to be, employed by the DOC to be a mentor. If you can be that level-headed support for people that are coming in and perhaps they are looking down the barrel of a lot of time, those football numbers, and they're angry at the world and everything's unfair, especially when they come in at, 18, 19, 20, and, the brain's still developing at that age. They're still boys. I think it's important that you take that role.
Yeah, that's absolutely what it is. They seek the guys that have in the most time and the ones that they feel like they can confide in and trust the most.
Right.
That's who they usually flock to for guidance, you know what I mean? And most of them can tell that I've been in the streets,
Yep.
Just by the way I carry myself, the knowledge I have of the streets.
People that come in and try and teach these cognitive classes and stuff, they've never walked a day in the life as somebody that's experienced poverty or drug use or not being able to find a job, right? But you've walked that path, and so you can find a place to relate with these people and meet them where they're at rather than just telling them what to do and what not to do, which I think is incredible, and a kudos to you. So I guess going forward, obviously we know that you've got a pardon in with the Pardons Office, and we'll be promoting the change petition for you through that. You know, like obviously you probably wrote a statement to support your pardon packet, and you know, I'm not going to ask you to read that word for word, but I guess for anyone that's watching that probably may not know you, why should the governor give you a pardon?
I wrote the governor and I basically told him, like, at 35 years old, I was a man that was troubled with an addiction. I was young, with a family, kids I had to support, and I was going through a real bad time in my life. And if he takes the time to look at the Marcus Ingram before those charges, then he will see that I wasn't the same Marcus Ingram that committed those charges. And I'm not that same Marcus Ingram now. Like, I've got a beautiful family out there that loves me, supports me. My kids are grown. I've lost 20 years with my kids. The growth in me from the time I got locked up to now, like, it's there. It's written in the DOC record books. Minus all these charges that Green Rock seems to want to keep throwing at me for whatever reason. I just want to get home to my mom. She's old. She's medically unable to come see me. I don't want her to remember her son in prison. You know, this is not where I want to spend my last days.
Yeah, I agree. So how can we support you? Aside from signing the petition, how would you like people watching to support you?
Anybody that reads my story and believes I should be home with my family, please sign that petition. You can write the governor letters of support if you feel like it. You can email Trudy Harris. She's the lady that's doing the pardon investigation, and you can show her your support for my release. I know that helps too. But I'm open to anything anybody can do to help me push this part.
I think, you know, as long as you stay focused on what you need to do, we're not expecting big influx of pardons at the end of Youngkin's term, but it's not unheard of. He has pardoned people. But at the same time, I think that, and based on everything we've talked about, I think that you're probably aware of timing. And I think that at some time you think to yourself, okay, do we want to push it under Youngkin and risk a denial? Or would we rather wait for somebody that is a little bit more liberal and less leaning, that is going to look at it with a fair and unbiased view, rather than push it under Youngkin and risk him not giving you the attention that you deserve, right? Like your story and what you've done and the things that, you know, you've worked on since you've been in prison, because that's important. And that's nearly more important than just getting it themed. Like, we want to get it themed in a way that's fair to you.
Thank you, Kirsten, for everything.
You're welcome.
Why are our faces so little? I don't know why these little. There we go. Perfect. All right. So that's the end of that. Do you want to go ahead, Sarah? You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Mm.
Okay. So that definitely was powerful. Things he went through, his journey getting there. But I do want to thank you again, Marcus, and to his family for allowing us to share that. Next, we're honored to have Curl and Nicole with us. They're going to introduce you to someone they love deeply, Scott Barmore, who has been fighting a wrongful conviction for 25 years.
All right, let me bring you guys up. So, Carol, we will start with you and then we'll hear from Nicole.
Okay. So, excuse me, I had to get off the porch because the mosquitoes started biting me. Okay. Hi, my name is Carol. I am Scott Barmore's mother. Um, Real quick, I know 5 minutes, right? Real quick, from the beginning, Scott was planned. He was planned to the T. Um, so I don't know. Scott was a great kid. He was a great kid, great son. Um, his father and I divorced early, and of course, I made it my business to make sure I took care of him, even though his father financially didn't wasn't there. He wasn't there a lot physically either. So, I had Scott go to the best schools, and when probably when he was in the 7th grade, I think I moved to where I live now. So he went to public schools here. But the schools here weren't bad or anything. There is a small town. But I'm not sure. I think I felt bad because I wanted Scott to be with his dad, because I feel boys do need their dad. So I let Scott go to where his dad was in Missouri for a year, school year. And he didn't do bad. I mean, he didn't do good. So he had to come back home. So he came home, he graduated from high school here. And then the same day he graduated, his father came. He's going to go live with his father. His father admitted later that he treated him like a friend and not like a son. So I'm sure even in Scott's adult age now, he probably says I was strict on him because I was raised in a very structural household, very strict household. So I thought when I was a kid, but when I got older, I realized that just made me have the character and the wisdom and discerning from right and wrong and that type of stuff. So anyway, so I let Scott, go to his dad's, and um, his dad treated him like a friend. What you let your friend do, whatever that was, hang out late with your buddies, maybe drink, smoke weed, whatever it was. And so, of course, Scott, he got in trouble and he went to jail and they sentenced him to prison. I was so angry with Scott. I didn't go see him for 5 years. That's how angry I was at him because he wasn't raised to do anything like that. We never had any, I never knew anything about prison system. Less more jail. I didn't even know anything about jail system. So I was angry, maybe partly ashamed at that time too, because, here I was thinking I raised my son to do right and be right. And he goes to prison. I don't know what made me lose anger. I don't know, maybe because I could see his growth when he was in prison, just his positivity. That still astounds me now, how he can be so positive. I don't know if he went in there like, I'm sure a lot of young men and women, when they go to prison, they're angry, mad at the system, and not take responsibility. But he I love the man that he's turned into. He was 19 or 20 when he went to prison. He's 45 now. And he's a man I'm proud of. You know, he deserves to be out. He really does. If they send people to prison for rehabilitation, he's definitely been rehabilitated. He's done a lot while he's in prison. He tells me about younger people, how they come in with no type of respect or anything. I told him, Scott, they're like that out here in the real world, outside of prison. These kids, they don't have respect. They talk anyway, they do anything. See, Scott was nothing like that. He was a respectful child. He was a great child, but anyway, he's written a book since he's been in there. He wrote about my father, who was one of the first Black physicians in Mississippi. He wrote about him. That's another thing, I guess, maybe, was my family was like, what? This is the doc's grandson? My father was a brilliant person, but Scott is too now. He sees that too. He sees that now. One time he told me, he said, Mom, I didn't know I was so smart, because he's read like over 600 books and any subject you can talk to him about. But I just hate that he's still incarcerated. He deserves to be out. He's a good man. He's a man that I'm proud of now. He's a good man. I don't know what else to say. that's yeah.
That's fine. You don't have to say anything more. That was perfect. Thank you for sharing. We really appreciate it. And it is very moving. And it's obviously different coming from a mother versus a family member or a fiance or a wife or a husband. So thank you for being so vulnerable. Nicole, did you want to come up and share before we get into Scott's interview? You need to unmute yourself first, lady. I muted you. I'm very sorry.
Yes, you did. So why didn't you unmute me? Okay, so I had all kind of things written that I obviously wanted to say, but this is just more of a personal thing. And just listening to Miss Carol speak, just my stomach is in knots right now. It's just, I have butterflies. Scott is a very, very special person. I met Scott just recently, honestly, October 2024. And we met on blackpeoplemeet.com. And when I signed up, I had no intentions or didn't know what to expect, who I would meet. Scott was very honest. He put on there, that he was incarcerated. So I knew from the start when I started speaking with him that he was already incarcerated. But I just thought, he looks nice. I want to meet him. I want to see what he has to say about himself. Scott was so sweet. So, immediately I was drawn to him just in our conversation. He has a very positive attitude. I didn't know him, obviously, when he was younger, but knowing him as the man that he is today, I can't understand why anybody would want him to be in prison for another 30 years. I just, for the life of me, when he started telling me his story and everything that, he had been through, immediately I'm like, what can I do? Can I do anything to help out? I didn't know much about doing any advocating or anything else with the prison systems. I go every weekend just about to see Scott. He's in Jefferson City Correctional Center, and I'm in St. Louis. So I'm about 2 hours from Scott. I try to go every Saturday to see him. So we have gotten very close in the time that I've met him. We spend countless hours on the phone throughout the day. I've been in other relationships, it could have been 10, 15 years. I know Scott better than any other relationship that I've been into. He is very open, very honest, has a lot of compassion for just people in general. I can have a hard day at work and be stressed, and yet he will still lift me up. He helps me be positive, and he's the one incarcerated. He carries such a great attitude that I really admire him just for the person that he is. Not only that, being incarcerated and behind the walls, he's studying a lot with about emerging adulthood, about trauma. He spends a lot of his time, studying that, learning about that, teaching and educating others that are incarcerated. It's something that he actually still looks forward to. Once he is released, he would like to continue to do that type of work, to help others grow. So what him being wrongfully convicted and in prison for the 25 years that he's been in there, even if Scott was guilty, he's done his time. He's been in prison long enough, but he's not guilty, and he still has another 30 years to go. That's just unexplainable. So right now, that's just mainly the mission right now, just to get Scott's story out there, bring awareness to his story, and help him through this journey so that he can become free and he can come out and be with his family and love everyone, and everyone can, just be able to share with Scott the rest of his life outside of the prisons. And I would like to also say that Scott does have a petition on change.org. So if you will go on change.org after you hear his story and what he has to say, if you feel led to sign his petition, we would greatly appreciate that. Also, we're on Facebook, and the profile is under Scott Barmore. So if anyone would like to write any letters, or if I can draft a letter and someone would like to send it on behalf of Scott to the Governor Mike Kehoe, who is our governor here in Missouri, or the Missouri Attorney General office, just reach out to me at any time. And if you have any questions or would like to know anything else, I would be glad to assist in giving you that information.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I appreciate you. Appreciate you. So we're going to go ahead and play Scott's interview now. So if anyone has any questions, again, Miss Carol and Nicole will be in the comments. So if anyone has anything to ask, add, please do so. And we hope you enjoy the interview as much as we did recording it.
Scott Barmore. Scott is incarcerated currently in the state of Missouri, and obviously I want to be able to give him the opportunity to share his story and highlight to you all exactly the journey leading up to here and how we can get involved in his fight. So Scott, thank you for joining us. If you just want to go ahead and introduce who you are, and then we can get into your story.
All right, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk to you and all your listeners. My name is Scott Barmore, and I am incarcerated in Missouri at Jefferson City Correctional Center. I've been in prison for the past 25 and a half years for 3 counts of first-degree robbery, and I have 2 30-year sentences running wild.
Okay. No firearm charges, no aggravated charges, just first-degree robbery.
Yeah, I just have 3 counts of first-degree robbery.
Let's go back before the crime in question.
I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. My mom and my dad were initially married. They divorced when I was about 3 or 4 years old. And my dad worked for a popular DJ. He was a DJ at a popular gospel radio station in Detroit. And my mom worked at the post office. I had a good childhood. My father, though, my mom ended up having a steady boyfriend for about 10 years. And I went to Catholic school. I went to a private school in Detroit for my first 8 years of school. I had never gotten in any kind of trouble. I was a real quiet kid. I liked to learn. I liked to swim, play sports. though I did have some adversity as a child, but it wasn't really that. I have a lot of positive memories. The only thing I can remember really was bad was the neighborhood that I lived in. Sometimes I looked outside the window and I would either hear shooting or see someone getting fight or something like that. And our house was broken into several times. We had bars on the windows. It wasn't that bad to me because at the time I just saw it as this is just how life is. So I think the trauma that I experienced initially was all vicarious.
Things, I guess, start to change you in terms of criminality and that deviant behavior.
It was actually when I was 14, the first time I got caught with a gun in high school, but I didn't even know how to use guns. My first time ever touching a gun. Me and my mom she married a preacher in 1993. She's still married to this day, and we moved to Indiana. And that's when I went to high school in Indiana. And this guy wanted to take CD change. He was next door to me. Now, CDs were big back then in the 90s. I know they're irrelevant now. Forgive me for my nostalgia. So the guy wanted this 6 CD changer for his car. He wanted to put it in his car, and so he had a little pro handle 22. And so he gave me the 22. I traded it, but I just wanted some money because I'm going to a new school and I wanted some money to buy some clothes. So my own clothes and my own choosing, because my mom would have bought me some clothes, but she would have gave me some clothes of her choosing. But if I had my own money, I was gonna buy my own clothes.
Yeah.
So I went to the guy. We ended up trading. I ended up taking it to the school. Another kid saw me with the gun in school, and the police were called to my classroom, and I ended up going to juvenile. What's crazy about juvenile time? When they walked into to the door, I didn't have any fear. It was like just like the age of 9, I had like this innate knowledge that this was where I was going to be. Committed crime by the age of 9 or 10 years old. I knew that incarceration was going to be a place that I was going to experience because I had seen so many other people go through this experience, right? When they closed that door, I didn't do nothing but drop down and start doing push-ups. All right. So I spent a few months in what they call pool schools, alternative school, and then they ended up letting me back into my high school. That's just before Columbine and all of that. So it wasn't really that much of a big deal getting caught with a gun in school. So they let me come right back in, and I went back to school. And that was my first time getting in trouble. My criminality really started when I was around 18 years old. And me and a friend of mine who was smoking weed, and we were watching this movie, Set It Off. And we were at the same time listening to this music where he was talking about hitting licks, which means, robberies, right? And so he was just like, man, let's go rob somebody. So we went and we did it. Never did anything, never even thought about robbing anybody or anything. But I was an emerging adult, right? My prefrontal cortex wasn't fully developed, right? And so my impulsivity, none of that mattered. That rush that I got from robbing it to first person was so exhilarating that I did it again and again and again. And I didn't even need the money. It wasn't about that. It was about the pain and the anger and frustration and irritation of whatever it was that I was going through internally. I can now project it on the other people, and I could see their face, their fear and uncertainty. But it was really mine that was on their face. Now I can see it. I lived through other people's pain, not knowing how to express my own.
It's interesting that you say the juvenile part didn't work in deterring you. The note that you make about it was just expected. Like it's almost like a rite of passage. It's almost just like you said, you're just resigned to the fact that this is probably going to be part of my life. This is just the norm. And so when we talk about, they say, well, we send people to prison to try and deter crime. I think sometimes when I speak to Black men and Black women particularly, they kind of feel like, well, no matter what I do, that's where I'm going to end up. Like I could walk the straight and narrow, and that's going to be part of my journey in life just because of who I am. And I think that's an incredibly important part of it, is that it almost wasn't enough to shock you into not doing it. And also hip hop and rap culture. And we know that those rappers and those hip hop artists, half of them haven't been to prison or don't do the things they actually talk about. I have a 13-year-old and he listens to these rap songs and he'll say something. And I'm like, do you even know what that means? But and he's like, no,
Right.
you know, and it's like, he just thinks it's so cool because it sounds good and there's a good beat. And these guys are wearing really cool clothes and driving good cars and walking around with guns, that they're almost to be idolized. I think with people like T. Grizzly and Kevin Gates are talking about the impacts of incarceration, but a lot of them don't, right? They're just talking about, excuse my French, bitches and money and drugs and cars and clothes.
Yeah.
And so that's super valid. What then happened after those few robbery instances?
Initially, I didn't get caught. I ended up stopping for a second, and I ended up going to college, and things are going through for a few months because in my heart of hearts, I really wasn't a quote unquote bad person. I did a lot of bad acts. And so I tried to clean myself up or whatever. A friend of mine, he ended up calling me from jail, and he was like, man, they know everything. They know everything. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And so I panicked. I left. I came here to Missouri, dropped out of school, everything. Even though I was trying to do the right thing now, I dropped out. I'm like, I'm done because I'm not. I've had that fear kicked in. My amygdala sent the message to my body and said, hey, please get out of here. So I left. I came to Missouri, and a week later, I got locked up for a first-degree robbery and second-degree robbery because now I'm here and I'm living in that state of fear. And that state of fear, like, literally caused me to do some stupid stuff. And so I ended up robbing 2 people. I got caught with the money, everything in the taxi cab. I had like $3,000 on me in the taxi cab. Police pulled us over. Gun pulled. I could have got shot. And the man pulling the gun out on me, I knew to have my hands up. I already know. As soon as I see the police, before he even came to the car, I had my hands up. And I ended up going to jail. But before I even made it to the jail, I confessed. I was by myself. I told him, hey, yeah, I did it. I robbed her. I robbed him. I did that. Yes, I did. And so I went to the county jail, and that's what stopped me initially. And so that was my incapacitation part. They stopped me from committing crimes. However, what are the 4 purposes for incarceration? Is deterrence, incapacitation, retribution, and rehabilitation. So the rehabilitation, it never touched me because when they locked me up, they put me in a pod with all other traumatized men and pain and, you know, because that's all jails and prisons are anyway. They're just trauma units. Nobody to guide us and help us to understand who we are and what we were doing. Not that I was not a bad person, but I embraced that I was a bad person at that point. But I ended up getting out.
So was that just jail? That wasn't prison?
No, I only made it to jail. So I ended up getting out on bond. My mother actually put up the house that I was born in. Right? She put that house up in Detroit to get me out and to give me a lawyer. And so I ended up getting 150 hours community service, 5 years intensive supervision, work release, and 10 and a 5-year bag-up if I violated my probation.
So you get out on bond, you're out doing your community service, I assume, and doing what you need to do. And so what happens then?
I tell myself I'm going to get on the straight and narrow. I end up getting a job, TNT, go to real estate school. I graduate from real estate school, but I did not receive my real estate license because I didn't have focus because I was using drugs. I was using cocaine. I was using various types of pills, alcohol, marijuana, just about anything. I was a poly addict. Was this
like a recreational thing? Was this something that now you look back, you were trying to like dumb out trauma? What do you think was your motivation?
I think what I was doing is I think I was trying to feel safe. I think that drug use, I was at a point where I did not feel emotionally safe. I didn't feel secure, and drugs, I didn't really see what it was doing and how I was spiraling out of control mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. I was using it as my security blanket.
And maybe that those substances, and correct me if I'm wrong, but those, like you said, a safety net, like it was something that you could control that was consistent. Even though it was negatively consistent, it was in your control and it was reliable. You knew what to expect.
Yeah.
It delivered what it delivered.
Yeah.
And so you knew that you could always rely on that high.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So you were only just
Absolutely.
18. Had you turned 18 at this point yet?
By the time I got out, I was 19.
So you didn't get your real estate license. You're at AT&T, but you're using. And so
Yeah.
what part did that play in what happened next?
It played a major role in what happened next. So I only had a few months left of freedom, and I've been there since. I had a partner, my girlfriend, and she also used, and it was a toxic relationship, and there was emotional and verbal abuse, nothing ever physical on either of us. One time she threw a phone in my head. As a matter of fact, it was the night that we got into it. So we got into an argument, and it was like really big argument. And, she threw her phone in my head, hit me in the head, and I just punched two holes in her wall, in her closet door wall, and ran out. Police were called, and that's when I became a suspect for why I'm in prison now. So after the domestic disturbance, they almost immediately arrested her because she had forgery charges. So they took her to the police station, and while she was at the police station, they discussed with her about the forgery. And then when she started describing me, they began to ask her questions about robberies, about her car, did I have access to her car, and they showed her a video, and they also asked her if she would say that I had something to do with the robberies in order for her to, like they threatened her. We'll take your daughter, you'll lose your apartment, your car, everything that you have will be gone. So she ended up writing a two-page statement. Not saying that I was involved in the robberies, but she was saying that the person that they saw in the video looked like it could have been me. Years later, probably in 2015, she filed an affidavit with an investigator saying that she was coerced into making those statements because she feared getting in trouble with the law and things like that. So I left and the apartment that night. I had went to a friend's house. My father paged me, the 90s pages for the thing, right? So my father paged me, and he was like, call me. So I called him, and he was like, man, a bunch of police officers came to my house, and they looking for you. So initially, I'm thinking like, oh, okay, so they must be looking for me for the domestic dispute. And if you get arrested and you're on probation, then you're gonna do jail time. How it goes, whether you're found guilty or not guilty, you have to fight the fact that you should not go to jail. I went on the run. I went to Indiana and I visited my mother. I stayed with my mom for, I don't know, maybe about a month or so. And then on January 11th, I decided, like, okay, I'm about to go ahead and leave and go back to Missouri. I'm going to just be all the way honest. Y2K was like real big back then. People were thinking that when the year 2000 comes, that all of the computers are going to shut down and everything's going to everything's going to be messed up. That's why I was on the run. I'm like, okay, if I stay gone long enough, then the computers, everything's going to be messed up, and maybe they'll forget about
We'll
this
just
stuff.
get away with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the probation violation, like, I'm going to be cool. But that didn't happen. So when January 11th came, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn myself in. Obviously, I'm going to have to do 10 years and 5 years because that was my backup on my robbery. And when I got locked up and I ended up going into the city jail, and they fingerprinted me, I saw it said like robbery first, robbery first. I guess they don't. I don't think they do it anymore. But how they did me at the time, they kept fingerprint me on different robbery first cards, and I'm like, what are they doing? What is this? So I asked them, it's like, yeah, that's what you are in here for. I'm like panicked. I'm like, there's no way. I end up getting interrogated by the police officers for probably about 2 hours. I kept giving them the same answers. I don't know anything about what you're talking about. This is where I was at that time. I can't remember where I was at that time because the robberies they were asking me about happened 7 months prior, 9 months prior, 5 months
Right.
prior, 3 months prior. Now, I'll be honest about my situation then. I was 19, 20 years old at the time. I used cocaine. I lived a fast life.
Mm-hmm.
I drank alcohol, marijuana, and so I wouldn't remember it anyway. They said it's going to be a lineup the next day. So I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
a physical lineup. I'm like, look, I need a lawyer. And they told me
Mm-hmm.
your lawyer can't come to the lineup. I ended that interrogation with that statement, I want a lawyer. And so
Mm-hmm.
after I ended the interrogation, that's when they told me, okay, well, interrogation's over, and you're going to have a physical lineup tomorrow. I'm like, okay. I don't want to show up without a lawyer present. So they told me lawyers is not present at lineup, blah, blah, blah. So the next day, I was basically compelled to show up at this lineup.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where the real interesting part comes.
Mm-hmm.
So the people who got robbed said that the person who robbed them had an African American slang. So my lineup consisted of four foreign exchange students from St. Kitts, Jamaica. So they gave us these cards to read that apparently the robber said during the robbery. And some of them
Mm-hmm.
said, give me the money, don't push any buttons, don't do anything stupid. So I read it. First, number one reads it. I'm number two. The first guy
Mm-hmm.
reads it. He reads it. Give me the money, man. Don't do anything
Wow.
stupid. So I read it. Give me the money, man. Don't do anything stupid, in my American, African American slang. The next person,
Oh, yeah.
put your hands up, what's the blood clot? I don't want to see you do anything, man. And
Um,
then the fourth person and the fifth person, they're all the same. All of these guys were foreign exchange students from a track team. But the person who robbed these people had African American slang. So this is what
mm-hmm.
they cleverly did. Police detectives in my case, they went to Lindenwood University. The dean of students at that time was a former police detective. So they're
Mm-hmm.
basically going to their former colleague saying, hey, we need some people in the lineup that fits this lineup because we can't find any black people anywhere else except these foreigners. Hey, how about those guys that's on the track team that come from
Right.
St. Kitts? Like, why did you choose to go get those guys from your colleague who used to be a detective with you, like one of your partners? Did my lineup, that they had 6 people view the
Mm-hmm.
lineup, and out of those 6, I was chosen by 2. So then, the next day after that, they did another lineup, but this time it was a photo lineup. Now, this guy who got robbed said that the person who robbed him was between the heights. Now, please follow me on this one, right? He was between the
Mm-hmm.
heights of 6'1" and 6'4". I am 6'4". All of the there were 6 people in my photo lineup. All of these men in the photo lineup, I promise you, were between the heights of 5'2" and 5'6". So there was one five foot
Mm-hmm.
two man, 2 5'3" men, one 5'4" man, and a 5'6" man, and me, 6'4". Now I'm
Right.
wondering, like, where did they find all these short black men, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like,
Yeah.
I don't even know. Like, any mini mighty mo wouldn't have picked all of these short black men. So I'm like
Yeah.
flabbergasted when I see my police report and I see the identifying information on there and I see all of these short people. And y'all said the man said to the person who robbed him, there's no other identifying information about the man. Everything else was that he was 6'1" to 6'4", and everything else on the statement was he had dark clothes, medium build. That's the only other identifying thing that he said about his physical description. Medium build, and everything else was about the clothes that the guy wore.
Mm-hmm.
Inevitably, I was chosen as the robber in that case as well. So now I have three first degree robbery charges that are on me. And the evidence that they used was those eyewitness statements, the statement from my ex girlfriend, and they went to my father's house, whom I did not live with, and they found an old, rusted, inoperable gun, and they went and fingerprinted it. I have the fingerprint analysis, and when they applied the fingerprints on the gun, there was one fingerprint on it. That one fingerprint that they found on it was a detective's fingerprint, a detective's fingerprint. And St. Charles County is predominantly white. At that time, it was really white. The police force is probably like 95% white. And the one fingerprint they found in that gun was a black detective. I say, man, I wonder if he's the robber. Right?
Yeah.
I was given a public defender.
Mm.
Because at the time, my family nor I had the money to pay the fees that the lawyers had wanted. They wanted $15,000 and up to represent me. So I had to go to court with the public, what we used to call public pretenders. Right? And so I went to court with a public defender. And we never got
And
along.
so you went to trial, right? Like you didn't plead at all.
No, I absolutely did not plead to robberies that I did.
So what was your plea offer?
My first offer was 4 life sentences to run concurrent.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, man, like even if I did commit these crimes, right? So my second offer was 25 years. And it's funny because I'm in my 25th year now. But I turned both of them down. I'm like, no, I didn't do it. I'm not doing that. And at the time, I had thought I was only going to get 10 years for my probation violation because the agreement that I signed said that I would get 10 and 5. But the judge said I don't have to adhere to that. You get 20 and 10. So the judge gave me 20 and 10. Then Missouri has the 85% rule, 85% law, so you have to do 85% of all your sentences.
With good time?
So there is no good time as of now. They're trying to pass bills. It just didn't make it this term.
So in Missouri, is robbery considered a violent crime in classification? First degree?
Yes, first degree is yeah, it's definitely
Okay, so if a good time bill was to pass, would that good time apply to violent offenders as well?
yes.
Okay.
There's actually a statement in there that says that's what they want to do, and they wanted to apply even to guys who have life sentences. So my trial was very interesting. So here they have 50 people on the bar, right? 50 candidates that they choose from the county. And so in one of them, out of the 50, there was one black person. And that black person was preemptively struck by the prosecution. So they give a preemptive strike. So you can just strike somebody for whatever you want to say. Just I don't want that person.
Yeah, so for whoever doesn't know, I think there's 3 from memory, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the prosecution and the defense each get 3 preemptive strikes based on nothing other than I just don't want them. So the fact that they struck the only black person representative of the jury is, yeah. I mean, it doesn't surprise me, but yeah.
So it happened in the first trial.
Mm.
And the trial was 12 an alternate juror, so 13 whites who were middle class. So not a jury of my peers. I
Right.
was a 20-year-old, what they call poor class at the time. So I was found guilty. Went to the next trial with the same attorney. So we never spoke. We never had any meetings. She didn't come visit me. None of that. No. So yeah. So I was found guilty. And the next one, the next trial, the Vajwire, I had one black guy in there, and he was struck, but we talked to him, asked him a question. He said that his brother was actually incarcerated. And he said that my brother did some robbery and he need to be where he is. He did that, and that's where he needs to be. He didn't get done wrong by the system or none of that. They struck him. I said, dang, he was saying his brother got what he deserved. Like, y'all still struck him?
Right.
The way he looked determined whether he was going to stay or go, I believe. Went to trial, and I found guilty again, and the judge gave me my first trial 30 years and 30 years running wild. So that means 30 years. I'm doing the first 30 years, and when I get done with this 30, I have to start the next 30. And then the next trial, I got another 30 years, 85%, right, on all of them. But that was running concurrent, right? So it's like I have two 30s, and it's like I have 60 years.
Right.
My first parole date is on my 70th.
So, what did your appeal process look like?
So I was not even, when I filed my appeal, of course, I got denied on everything,
Mm-hmm.
but I had a fair hearing to find out if I should go back for a retrial, see if my girlfriend, but she would not testify. Even
Mm.
in my preliminary hearing, she just didn't want to have anything to do with them. She feared retaliation by the police officers. She just wanted to be left home. So that preliminary hearing was denied based on that fact. I was procedurally barred from filing because I was late. And I was only late because, so when I was about 22 years old, I got into it with the COs. A CO lied on me in a violation, and I got angry about it, and I started like trying to explain myself, and the other officer was like, calm down, so I calmed down. And then I'm like, man, he lying, and I got amped up again. And he was like, calm down, and you're going to be giving your statement from two house. And like right then, I kind of like flipped out, like, two houses the whole. Man, what? Man, you're not going to threaten me with that. Fuck two house, fuck you. And I ended up going to the hole. And when I went to the hole, well, they put me in handcuffs and then they sprayed me with mace, right? And after I was in the handcuffs, and they took me to the hole. When they took me to the hole, I had a deadline that was due in like about a month. I never got my legal work. I was done with it. I literally was ready to put my stuff in the mail, and I never received my paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
I got procedurally barred for being late, and so since being procedurally barred, that harms you like for the rest of your appeal process,
Right.
unless you prove manifest injustice and that I was hindered in some way. With saying I have letters from the property room with their stamp on it, showing that I did not have my legal work and that I was requesting it, and they would not give it to me. Like I have all of that evidence. So if I ever need it in order to file to overcome that procedural default rule, I can. But so I've been procedurally barred for so no court, no higher court has really heard my claims.
Right.
So it's the process that I'm in now. I really need representation so that I can have someone. Cause I have a lawyer, but the lawyer that I have is like pushing for me. Like we gave this man $3,000. He hasn't done anything to help me. Like literally nothing. He hasn't filed any paperwork. He hasn't done anything. So we paid him this money and nothing.
What options do you have in Missouri in terms of post-conviction remedies that you can pursue now?
So in Missouri, I do have the option of filing a federal habeas corpus.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the option that I'm holding till I'm ready. I have my claims. I have everything ready to go. I just really need the right people that's gonna really push for me. And so that's what I've been searching for. I've had the Innocence Project work on my case. They worked on my case for like 2 years, and I was frustrated. And they kept putting me off. Other cases are more important. These death row cases, like high-profile cases, because I just have robberies. My case is not sensational. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so they passed me to this other organization called Paulie Wilson Project in Kansas. And they're good people. Both organizations, they're good people. And the Paulie Wilson Project, they come and I'll meet with students. So I meet with one set of students, and I have to explain to these two students what my case is. Then I meet another two set of students after their semester's over, and I just kept meeting students. After about the fourth set of students, I was frustrated. I'm like, listen, I don't want to just keep starting over. I feel like we're not going anywhere. We're going in circles.
Right.
So I hired representation thinking that if I pay somebody, maybe something will happen. And nothing has happened. I've had this same attorney probably about 7 years. Multiple investigators work on my case. Like top investigators in the state worked on my case. an international law firm called Brian Cave, and I've had them work on my case pro bono. And people seem excited when they first start, but I think what is difficult is proving my innocence because proving my guilt seemed simple, but it was like nothing. There was lack of evidence to prove my guilt, but they accomplished their goal. And so now proving my innocence is like, okay, how do we prove someone did not do something when we don't really have any type of evidence? So it's just been difficult.
Yeah, I think it's key, like especially, if there's no DNA, and it's okay, you've been found guilty. So now the onus is on you to prove innocence rather than the onus being on the prosecutor to provide evidence to support a conviction. It's now almost doubly as hard because you have to kind of battle against a conviction. Like they see a conviction as you did it. And so there's so much weight on that you almost have to come with all of this extra over and above. And it's like, okay, but what do you want? Obviously, this ex-girlfriend of yours doesn't want anything to do with it. And even then, redacted testimony, I mean, I don't know about Missouri, but redacted testimony, from what I've heard, doesn't hold a great deal of weight. Like it's not enough on its own to carry. And obviously she's got fear, and rightly so, right? If what she said was correct, that the coercion was done out of fear itself. And so why wouldn't she think that, that was going to be the case if she redacted that? And so where do you start to argue? Like, where do you start to pick apart the issues with procedural, whether it's procedural, the issues with the lineup or whatever it might be, in terms of what was done and how it was, whether it was investigatory misconduct or whatever it might be. Talk to me about, although you're fighting for your freedom and your exoneration, what incarceration has looked like for you and the part it's played in your life.
So when I first came to prison, like you said, I was 20 years old. I was an emerging adult. I was not fully developed in my understanding about life, socially, biologically, like emotionally, physically. I grew a beard and a goatee in prison. You know what I'm saying? Like I literally grew up in this place. I've been in prison longer than I've been. When I came, I had no direction. I had no purpose. I didn't understand who I was, or I didn't get the world. I was lost. I was misunderstood. I was traumatized. I didn't know anything, man. I was really up, and I thought I knew a lot. And so my incarceration could have went a lot different. It could have turned me into a monster because I've seen it. It could have turned me into someone who has no morals, someone who doesn't care about anyone else. However, for me, being in prison, when I came, I spent years in a death row prison when I first came to prison. I had four men who were on death row within a very serious place. And being so young and seeing like people that I knew that I had got close to get taken away, and next time I see them, it's on the news saying that they were killed at 12 o'clock at night. It does something to you.
Yeah.
And luckily, I had older guys. To me, they were older. You know, they were in their 30s. They were old.
Yeah. The
They
old
looked
heads.
old. Well, they old.
Yeah,
They
we call them
yeah,
old heads. Yeah.
yeah, they old. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so luckily, they embraced me.
Yeah.
And they saw something in me. They were like, yo, bro, come here.
Mhm.
Take this book. Hey, this is how you should do your time. You know, jail like this. Don't do that. Don't get involved in this. Don't get involved in that. Have direction and purpose. What do you want to do? Who are you? And started asking me all of these questions about myself, walking on the track and exercising with me and taking me to the library and opening up the dictionary and asking me to see homework and books. And I used to come back with bags of canteen, and they like, you keep finding all of this food. Where your books at? What's your library look like? Right? I'm like, dang, library look like? I'm gonna get the books from you.
You're like,
Like,
man, I'm just hungry.
yeah, I'm hungry, man. I'm still growing. Like, I'm trying to eat. What are you talking about a library? I go to the library and up there, they got a library with
Mm,
every book. The
yeah.
books that they were giving me were books that were actually causing introspection, causing me
Mm-hmm.
to look deep within myself. And I was blessed to have those men. And I still remember them to this day. And every one of those guys who were helping me and saved me, they're free right now. And they're on the streets and they're very successful. Every one of them. There's three
Amazing.
who are, and all three of them are doing very good. One of them is a
Mm-hmm.
multimillionaire. Another one travels around. He's Muslim. Another guy's a Muslim, and he travels around and he speaks. Right. And another guy is in Missouri and he works in the. Actually, he works, does things for the governor, state
Mm-hmm.
capitol. Like he's really involved in prison reform and stuff like that. So prison for me did not look like I saw how it looked for other people. So I embraced that information and knowledge because things that I saw in those books were the same thing that my mother was telling me. Because my mother
Mm-hmm.
used to give me books when I was coming up. She used to say, "Here, read this book," and I would read these books. Only my problem was I didn't understand them. So I always tell people there are three levels to knowing the truth. First, you learn it, right? Slash remember it, right? The second
Mm-hmm.
step is you see how do I process that information? How does it fit
Mm-hmm.
into my life? Where does that information go into my life? Where do I put it? How does it make sense for me? And the
Mm-hmm.
last thing is live it. So if you go through those steps, right, that is how you know the truth, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't do that when I was coming up. While I was doing was getting the rope part, I was just remembering, and I didn't understand how to process and then the walking it, living it, right?
Well, sometimes you can't walk it and live it until the opportunity comes, right? Like you
Yeah.
could read a book and I could read the same book, and we're going to I may not be able to take what's in that book because maybe never, or maybe not in 10 years or 15 years, because I haven't come across a situation where I've been able to apply it. And so maybe, your mom had all the good intentions, but because you hadn't been faced with an environment or a circumstance where you could apply those things, it was kind of just like the brain doesn't hold on to it because it's not relevant. So the brain goes, okay, I'm going to keep what I need to survive, and everything else just goes out like a paper shredder.
Right. Have you ever
Mm-hmm.
heard the saying, we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are? I spend almost every waking moment without exception of the time that I decompress, time that I, might play a video game or I might relax and watch a little nonsense TV like
Dave's our lives.
Housewives of Atlanta.
Yeah.
Huh?
I knew you were going to say something like that. Housewives of Atlanta,
Yeah,
the
yeah, that's my little stuff.
Chrisleys, Teen
Yeah,
Mom.
stuff that I could just say, man, these people crazy. But outside of that time that I do those things, like majority of my time is spent actually giving back. So I'm
Yeah.
a big believer in the 12-step program, AA, and the 12 step is the principle is service, right? So
Yep.
basically giving back to those who are where you once were. And so
Yeah.
that's what I do. Most of my I'm not perfect in my deeds, right? The
Mhm.
majority of the time that I am walking around and talking, I am talking with someone or about someone or studying for someone else because I remember what those men did for me, right?
Mhm.
And I'm going to do the same thing for those young guys. There's a guy right here in this wing with me. Is 18 years old, right?
Mhm.
Complete. He doesn't know anything, right? But he's so embracing with, hey, brother, want to hug and talk, and
Yeah.
he's just so open. But he's been through a lot. You can see it when you see his
Yeah.
arm. He was a cutter. You can see it when you hear his stories about the foster care system, and things like that, right? I try to get back to people like him because I
Yeah.
know if I can teach him and reach him, that's
Yeah.
all every day. That is what I do from working in restorative justice here or working in a reentry center here. Those things that I do are not only for me because I will be honest about it. And the I want to come home, and I hope that the things that I do will cause someone to say, "Hey, man, this man does not belong in prison."
Right.
Because I am consistent with it. It is not something that I just started. I have shown a consistent pattern of moral, law-abiding behavior, and so
Mhm.
someone can see this. Like he has been more nonviolent and more peaceful and more helping in his life. We can see it on the record. And so I do want to do that because I believe that prison is a trauma unit and it's also a recovery unit. Like most of us who are in here have been traumatized. So when you come here, if you made mistakes when you were free, you come here and you work on yourself. You get yourself together, you learn, you develop, you grow, and you teach those people who are behind you, and you pave the way for yourself in preparation for getting out.
Mm.
Right? That's all we're all supposed to be doing, preparing to go home. Right?
Yeah.
Preparing to stay here for the next 30, 40 years. Right? So we can look at different, what is the prison?
Norway?
Can't, huh?
Norway?
Yeah, yeah. Like we
Yeah.
can look at it. So they're trying those systems here in Missouri.
Mm.
Norway, they're trying it. They have it
Mhm.
where they have couches and one man
Yeah.
rooms and doors never lock.
They wash their own laundry, they do their own stuff, and it's like a
Right.
community.
And they're trying that here. They're literally starting that.
I
So
love
like
that.
right now, where I am, they're trying to like turn this whole prison into that. They're moving us around from house to house and they're trying to figure out. They call it Dynamo program.
Okay.
So it started in Bowling Green.
Yeah.
I was actually in Bowling Green in 2000, but it started in it's Northeast Correctional Center, but it's a long waiting list for people to get in.
I bet. But that's a positive thing as well because it means that a lot of people qualify, right? Like I'm sure there's very stringent qualification markers that you have to
Oh,
meet,
yeah.
like charge free and attempts at violence against correctional officers, and that's a positive thing.
So
Hmm.
the wing I'm in is not that bad. So there's four wings in each housing unit, 72
Hmm.
people in each wing. So there's 288 people in each housing unit, right? So in C wing, right, is where they keep the guys who just came out of the hole. They're quote unquote troublemakers, the people they like to lock down all day, right? And so that's where we hold classes at. I have two classes. One happened to me and tips. Tips I
Hmm.
teach in the trauma informed practices I teach in the reentry center. This class I teach in the housing unit. And I would not be able to reach these young guys. So for my individual case, I would like
Okay.
you to go on change.org and sign that petition and share that with me. I would also like
Okay.
people to go on my Facebook page and see all of the content that's on there and share those things with other people and to
Yeah.
just become more aware. And it's not
Hmm.
only about me. Like there are many other men and women who are faced with this same
Hmm.
situation. But in my case, in my situation, that is what I think people can do is to
Yeah.
support me by becoming more aware. And I'm going to constantly have more things that's going to be on Facebook. It's going
Hmm.
to be ever evolving. I'm going to keep having my voice on there, keep having posts, things to do. So the governor of Missouri told the parole board that he wants them to basically reconstruct the parole, how they people are eligible for parole and things like that. So he has what he calls a working group, right? And if people go on mojustice.org and go on there, there are three things that the governor is interested in having them look at, and that is consecutive sentences, violent crimes, and life without sentences. And so, what I would like people to do also, in addition to going on my individual things, is to go on there and support that working group and tell them that they support that change in consecutive sentences.
Will it be
Because
retroactive?
to be yes,
Okay.
yeah, I believe so. Yeah, because
Okay.
things in Missouri have always that's how it's always worked in the state, like juvenile law, when they just
Sorry.
changed that juvenile, raised the juvenile age up, all of them got. But as of this moment, just supporting me by going online and remaining
Hmm.
active and
Yeah.
watching this change because I'm going to tell you something. That I know what the law says. I know what I have different papers. I have so much paperwork that says how much time I'm going to do. I've been
Hmm.
told by judges and prosecutors and parole boards and my peers, caseworkers. People told me sense that I have, and I know, right? I've
Uh-huh.
seen it on paper, right?
Uh-huh.
But I know for a fact
Right.
that's not my destiny.
Yes.
That's not my destiny. So I really
Yeah.
believe this is like my calling, my word. Because when I work with
Yeah.
these guys, I feel it. Like I touch them, they touch me. This is like very good work, and I want to pass this
Yeah.
on to other people, right? I
People are aware that they've got trauma, but they just sit there and they go, well, this is what happened to me. And they don't see how it connects to everything that they do after
right.
that.
What is a big deal for me is I'm learning that vicarious trauma, like we just talked about, I want to end up
Mm-hmm.
having begin something where we have like maybe like once a month we have family members come up here and visiting and we discuss trauma, vicarious trauma with them, right? Because they've been
Yeah.
affected. Mothers, children,
Mm-hmm.
girlfriends, wives, fathers, sons, right? They've been affected
Yeah.
by this vicariously, right? They have secondary
Mm-hmm.
trauma. They're going through this, right? So that is
Yeah.
something else that I'm very serious about. So this is something that is a passion of mine. And if you can assist me in any way with that, I don't believe in coincidence,
Okay.
and I believe that it's meant for a reason. And this could be
Okay.
that
Yeah.
first brought us together for not just for me, but for us as a whole, right? People,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. I
Right.
agree.
So,
I
so
agree.
much bigger, so much bigger, right? We don't have to be a superstar. People know who we are to make massive change.
See if Miss Carol's around. Sarah, are you there?
I'm here. I'm just in my pajamas now.
Oh, I bet they're beautiful. And then we'll add Mary Beth in.
Okay, see.
Did you hear me?
Oh, gorgeous.
Hi.
Yeah,
Yes.
I have to get up
Perfect.
pretty
All right.
early,
So
so
we are so grateful to every single one of you who tuned in tonight. Obviously, to Scott and Marcus for your vulnerability, courage, and voices. To the families for showing up with strength and love, and to all of you watching for caring enough to be here. I guess I just want to open up. We'll go around if there's any final words that anyone wants to say before we kind of close out and Sarah closes us off for tonight. Nicole, just unmute yourself first, though. I didn't mute you this time. You did it yourself.
Yes, okay. I don't have much to say other than I would like to thank the both of you for having us and allowing Scott to be a part of the Bridges and Beyond show. And just hope that anyone that is listening, like I said before, if they do feel led, to please go to change.org and sign Scott Barmore's petition. We would really appreciate that. Thank you.
Perfect. Mary Beth?
I just want to thank everybody for coming, and also please go sign Marcus Ingram and Scott's petition. And I dropped it in the chat, but if anybody has any questions about what else they can do to help, please reach out to me on Facebook.
Perfect. And Miss Carol?
I ditto that. I don't have too much to say after that. But thank you very much for involving me in this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you all.
And thank you all for joining. Before we go, mark your calendars. Our next live is July 22nd. So we'll be back with more real stories, raw truth, and fierce advocacy. Until then, keep sharing, keep asking questions, and keep showing up. Together, we break the cycle. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye,
Good night.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.